Hello everyone, my name is Shervin. Welcome to my video on Integrated Development Environment. An IDE or Integrated Development Environment is just a software application that allows you to write code, debug code, and run code, giving you all the tools which are necessary for your project development. There are a lot of IDEs and beginners often confuse text editors with code editors with IDEs. Text editors do not provide a lot of the features necessary for fast programming development. Usually, at most, you will get syntax highlighting and line numbering. Code editors are more advanced, giving you more tools to write your code. Now, IDEs are a specialized application which provides you with all the tools necessary for your project development. For Python, the most popular one is PyCharm. It is beginner friendly. In this video, I will be talking about Visual Studio Code and PyCharm. When it comes to PyCharm, all you have to do is install, start a new project, and you are ready to go. It is very beginner friendly. It will hold your hand throughout your journey when you're learning Python. It is my #1 recommendation when it comes to writing Python code. Visual Studio Code is a code editor with extensions and plugin. It can become your IDE. However, there is a little bit of setup required from your side. So you will need to install it. Then you will need to search for extensions and install those. And depending on your project, you may have to install additional extension as you progress through your project. So let me show you a demo for the PyCharm installation. Downloading PyCharm is fairly easy. All you have to do is go to the link, or you can use the QR code here, and make sure to download the community edition, which is free. There is a paid version which offers more features, but as a beginner, when you are learning, you don't need the paid version yet. If you want to search for the PyCharm installation, you can go to your browser. In this case, I am using Microsoft Bing. Type in PyCharm and then look for the website that says jetbrains.com. Go in, you will see that there is a PyCharm professional version that is only 30-day free trial, and then you will have to pay a subscription fee. Scroll down and you will see PyCharm Community Edition. Download this one. Next, once your download is completed, you can click on the Start menu, then search for File Explorer. Click on Downloads. You can do it from here or here. Then you should have your PyCharm Community Installer. When you install it, you may see the UAC prompt. You can click on the Next button. The PyCharm Community Edition welcome page. Click on Next. Choose an install location. When you get the installation options, click on all the checkboxes. Make sure all of them are checked. Then finally click on Install. This will install the PyCharm Community Edition. Once it's installed, you will see a Finish button. Click on it. Next, to start PyCharm, again go to your Start menu, type in PyCharm, and then click on the icon. If you see this splash screen that says PyCharm Community, it means that PyCharm is installed. It's starting right now. Once it's done, you will see a Welcome to PyCharm window where you can create new project, open an existing project. You can also download one from GitHub. Next, let's talk about Visual Studio Code. To download Visual Studio Code, you have to go to this website, or you can use the QR code here. Then choose for your Windows, Linux, or Mac operating system, and download the installer. You can go to your browser, search for Visual Studio Code, and click on the download button for the link that says code.visualstudio.com. This will open the official page, and you can click on the download button here. Installing Visual Studio Code, you can go to your downloads folder, click on the Start menu, search for File Explorer. You can click on download directly here if it shows up for you, or you can click on the File Explorer icon to open the File Explorer, and then select Downloads from here. Double click on the Visual Studio Code icon. It should say VS Code. When it comes to installing Visual Studio Code, you will get an agreement. Make sure to check the I agree. Click on the Next button. Then choose your installation directory. Click on the Next button. Then again, click on the Next button to create a shortcut. In here, you want to make sure you have all the checkboxes checked, and then click on the next button. Then you will get a message that says ready to install. Click on the install button. This will install Visual Studio Code on your machine. To test the installation, again go to your start menu and search for Visual Studio Code. You should get the icon. Click on it. This will open Visual Studio Code. By default, you will get a welcome page where you can open a new file. You can open a folder. You can clone from GitHub or Git repository. I will be highlighting some of the features for PyCharm and Visual Studio Code. I will show you side by side how you can do all of these. To start a new project in PyCharm, open PyCharm. In the Welcome to PyCharm page, click on the New Project button. Then choose a location for your project. By default, PyCharm will automatically add a new virtual environment, and make sure to have a create main.py welcome script check. Then click on the create button. This will open PyCharm with a main.py file already created for you. It's just a template file. You may also get a tip of the day page. You can read it as a beginner. To close the tip of the day, click on the X icon or close button. Now, one thing to pay attention in PyCharm: when you open a new project or you create a new project, at the bottom you will see that it is discovering or it is indexing the project directory. This means that PyCharm is actually going through and reading all of your files, your project files. The next thing that beginners usually are afraid of is this Microsoft Defender configuration pop-up. So here's a diagram representing what PyCharm and Microsoft Defender does. So in here we have the project structure where we have a file, test.py file, some code, and this is inside of PyCharm. When PyCharm tries to go into your SSD or hard drive and is trying to read or write some file, Microsoft Defender will come in and do a check on PyCharm just to make sure that there is no malicious program running and trying to access these files. So this pop-up, when we click on the automatic, or you can click on more and choose manual, it means that we are adding an exception to Microsoft Defender configuration, saying that allow PyCharm to look up and index these files without doing a real-time check on PyCharm. Let's talk about how to create a new project in Visual Studio Code. So open Visual Studio Code. You will see your welcome page. You can use these shortcut button to create your project. So you can create a new file. You can open an existing file, and you can also open a project if you have one. You can also go to GitHub and download one from there. Now in Visual Studio Code, you do not get a dedicated screen that goes through setting up your project. You will have to manually create a folder. If you need a virtual environment, you will have to create that virtual environment. You can do it inside of Visual Studio Code, or you can do it through your terminal, but it's going to be a manual process. So in this case, let's take an example where we are opening a new folder. We select the open folder option. You can go to file and then select open folder. This will give you your default Windows open folder window. Navigate to the file. You can click on the new folder to create a new folder, and then click on select folder. This will open the folder on the left side here, and Visual Studio Code will ask you if you trust that folder. In that case, you will click on yes, I trust the authors. Now Visual Studio Code will not create a main.py template file for you. You will have to create that one. Hover your mouse over this area, and then you will get these options at the top. The plus icon is to create a new file, and then the next one is to create a folder. Click on the new file, name it name.py file, and it will open up here. You can also click on it or double click on it to open it. Now once Visual Studio Code has detected that you have a .py or Python file open, it will try to ask you to install the Python extension. Click on the install button. Now in case you miss this notification, then you'll have to go into the extension tab and install it from there. Without the extensions, when you try to type in a Python function or a statement, you will not get any suggestion. In here, I'm typing print, but as you can see, nothing is showing up. That is because I have not yet installed the Python extension inside of Visual Studio Code. Go ahead and click on the install button. This will take you to the Visual Studio Code extension marketplace. If you close that pop-up, then you will have to type in Python in the search bar here and then look for the Python icon by Microsoft. Then around here you will get an install button. For me, it's already installed. That is why it's showing as disable uninstall, but for you it will show install. Click on install and wait for it to complete. Once completed, you should see disable uninstall, and it will tell you that the extension is enabled globally. This means that the extension has been installed correctly. Let's take a look at the code completion functionality within PyCharm and Visual Studio Code. In PyCharm, when you type in print or any other function, you will automatically get this suggestion. You can select one from the list. You can either press on tab to automatically complete the statement. You can press enter, or you can double click on one of these suggestions. Also, PyCharm will tell you that you are using Python and the Python version at the bottom. For Visual Studio Code, you will need the extension first, and when you start typing, you will get the suggestions. Again, you can use tab, press enter, or double click on the suggestion to autocomplete. Visual Studio Code as well will tell you that you are in a Python file and the Python version that you're using. In terms of syntax highlighting, both PyCharm and Visual Studio Code will give you highlights in different colors. In PyCharm, the comments are usually grayed out, and then you have function name in one color, parameters in one color. The same thing is true for Visual Studio Code. The colors are a little bit different, but that is just the theme that you can install for both PyCharm and Visual Studio Code. As a beginner, you do not want to learn about the IDE or code editor. Instead, you want to focus on learning the programming language first. Then later you can go and customize your IDE or code editor as much as you want. Now let's talk about problems. Now in Visual Studio Code, whenever you have a problem, it will highlight, and when you hover your mouse cursor over the problem, it will give you an explanation of what is happening. In this case, I've misspelled the print function, and it's telling me PRIT is not defined. Now at the bottom, if you click on the view problem option, this will open problem tab and you will see all of the problems down there. In PyCharm, same thing. If you have a misspelling or a problem, you will see a red bulb icon, means there is an error. And if you go on the right side, you will see that it tells you the number of problems, warning as well. If you click on the icon, any of these icons, it will open the problem tab at the bottom. And again, you can go in and read it and fix those problems from here. Now next, let's talk about linters. The Python linters are just code that someone else wrote that will run and analyze your project source code, and then will find potential errors, vulnerability, or bugs that are within your code. It's just a static code analysis tool. Now the linter in PyCharm, you don't have to do anything. It's already installed for you. So the moment there is some code that is unreachable, like here, I have a break statement before the print statement. So the code will never reach the print statement. It's telling me that this code is unreachable. I also have a variable that I did not use. It's telling me here. And then according to PEP 8, there are some guidelines that all Python programmers follow, just so that we have similar code across multiple projects. And in here, I've simulated an example where I did not add white spaces around the equal sign. I've also did not leave two blank spaces in between two statements or two functions. And it's telling me down here that I have these problems. So that was inside of PyCharm. You will get these warnings or problems again from the tab there, or you can click on the problem pane on the left side. at the bottom left. Now, when it comes to Visual Studio Code, by default, you will not get anything. So as you can see at the top, it doesn't tell me that the Python code that I have here is not properly styled, is not properly formatted. It doesn't even tell me that this code will not be reached or that this variable is not in use. The problems tab is completely empty, and that is because we need to install the linter, the Python linter inside of Visual Studio Code and make it our default or select it. So again, we need more extension here. Let's go to the extension tab. So in Visual Studio Code on the left, choose this icon, then type in PyLink. This is a Python linter. You will see it's by Microsoft again. Click on the install button here, or you can click on the install button here. Wait for it to install. Once it's installed, again, it will tell you that the extension is installed globally and the install button will disappear. Instead, you will have disable uninstall button. If you go back to the Python file, now you will see that Visual Studio Code is telling us that there is a problem in our code and that there are unused function, unreachable code, and missing docstring. All right. So next thing is, now that we have problems in our code, we want to quickly fix those problems. And IDE usually will give you options to fix some common problems in a smart way. So typos automatically suggest you ways to fix those. We've already seen undeclared variables. That shows up in the problems tab. If you have imports but you did not use it, again, it will highlight it. Missing imports, unused variables, undeclared variables, type errors, coding style validation. So that was those PEP8 missing 2 lines or missing white space, and as well as missing docstrings. In order to get those quick fixes, you want to make sure that you're hovering over the problem. Let's take a look at PyCharm. If I hover over this line, it's telling me that I have an option to reformat the file. If I reformat the file, it will add the white spaces for me. So in Visual Studio Code, if I hover over this line, it is telling me that the code is unreachable, and I can click on this link here. It will open a page where I can read more on it. Now, in this case, I don't get an option to remove it because the linter doesn't know if I don't want this code or I should move this code up here. But both Visual Studio Code and PyCharm will give you these quick fixes. Next, let's talk about refactoring code. In PyCharm, let's take an example here. I have this badly formatted and poorly defined variable names. So I have a function called C, have a list called LST. I just have some poor variable names here. Now, if I hover over LST and right click, I will get the option to refactor. And in PyCharm, it gives you submenus. So if I hover over refactor, it will open a list of all available refactoring options. Now, in this case, I just want to click on rename. Once I click on rename, it will tell me that I am renaming this variable name into a new variable name. PyCharm will give me the option to refactor or to preview without making permanent changes. So this was the old function with the LST still here. Once I use this rename box and change it, it will change all the occurrences of LST. So we have 1 and 2. As you can see at the bottom, it changed it to list of numbers. I had to type in list of numbers, but it changed it in both places. This is refactoring, and there's a lot more that you can do. You can introduce a variable, introduce a constant. You can also extract part of your code into its own method or function. Now in Visual Studio Code, I have the same code here. Again, I will right click on LST. Visual Studio Code has just one right click context menu. In there, you will need to find the refactor. Now, once you click on refactor, it will try to analyze the code to give you the various refactoring options. So the one that we saw in PyCharm, and in here it's telling us that it cannot find any refactoring options. So instead, what we need to do is go back to the LST, right click, and instead of clicking on refactor, we need to click on the rename symbol option. Alternately, you can press on F2, and this will give you the option to rename it. Again, Visual Studio Code will give you the option to permanently make the changes by pressing enter, or you can press Shift Enter to have a preview. Once the changes are completed, you will see both occurrences will change. Now next I will talk about debugging tools. In PyCharm, the way you would debug a code or a file is by first clicking on the numbers. This will add a breakpoint, and then at the top right you will click on this bug icon, which is for debugging the code. So here's the debugger running. It's telling us that there's a red icon here telling us that there's a breakpoint there. The line at which the code execution paused is highlighted. The code is stopped before running this line. Now on the right, the debug button will change into a rerun button and a stop button. And then at the bottom, you'll get your options to debug the file. So in here, it's telling us that it's the main.py at the line number 5. And then we have the options to view the variables, local as well as global variables. Now, debugging tools in Visual Studio Code. First, we have to add the breakpoints. Now in Visual Studio Code, instead of clicking on the line number, you will click on just next to the line number on the left side of the line number. This is called the gutter, and then the debug button is on the left side by default. You will click on it. This will open the debugger page where you will need to click on the create a launch.json file. This will tell Visual Studio Code what type of file it is and how you want the debugger to be attached to it. For this example, I will just select a Python file and then click on the run and debug options. Okay, so first thing, it will open a terminal where it's going to run the command for you, and in here we can see that it is attaching a debugger to the main.py file. Similar to PyCharm, it will tell us that the code execution is stopped before this line, also highlighting the line. The tools available for us will show at the top, and this is how we are going to choose whether to move forward with the debugging. So we can continue, we can step over, step into, step out, restart the debugging process from the beginning, or stop it completely. Now on the left side here, we have the view where we can go in to inspect the local and global variables. Let's talk about integrated terminal within your IDE. In PyCharm, it's very easy. So at the bottom left, we just need to find this icon and click on it. Now, because PyCharm, whenever you create a new project, it will create a virtual environment. So we have this virtual environment created by PyCharm, venv. When we open the terminal, it will automatically go into the project directory and then activate that virtual environment. For Visual Studio Code, you can use the shortcut button Control Shift and tilde, or you can go into the menu, click on Terminal, New Terminal. This will open a terminal in the project directory, but by default, Visual Studio Code does not create a virtual environment. So right now we are using the system-wide Python version. However, if you manually created a virtual environment, when you click on the terminal, new terminal, Visual Studio Code will detect that you have a virtual environment present in your project directory and will automatically activate that virtual environment. Now, lastly, I want to talk about Git integration. In PyCharm, you will go to the bottom left again and click on the Git icon. You can again use the shortcut depending on your system. It will open at the bottom where you will be able to see the branches, and then in here in the middle you will be able to see the history of your project. Now if you click on this button here and you've made changes to your project, you will be able to commit those changes directly from the PyCharm IDE. You can also push to GitHub if you have your GitHub account linked to your PyCharm. In Visual Studio Code, again, Visual Studio Code supports Git integration. So we'll go onto the left side, click on this button here. This will open the Git page where you can commit your changes. If you double click on a file which is showing within the changes pane, it will open a file difference page or view where you will be able to see the changes. So in this case, as you can see, this part here is different. So it is highlighting, it's telling us that there is a change here. The same thing is available in PyCharm as well. Now, one thing to note here is that the visual structure or tree structure that we have within PyCharm, where it shows all the changes, is not available by default within Visual Studio Code. You will need to add additional extensions and activate that in order to see. So the final question would be, which one is better? Should we be using an IDE, PyCharm, or Visual Studio Code? Well, if you are a beginner, then I will recommend you sticking with PyCharm. This way you are not learning a code editor. Instead, you will be learning the programming language. Now, as you progress, as you become good and experienced with Python, you're transitioning from beginner to intermediate, then you will find that PyCharm Community Free Edition will no longer meet your criteria. You will need to upgrade to the professional or paid version in order to complete your project. In that case, I would recommend you to switch to Visual Studio Code. Spend about an hour or two learning about Visual Studio Code, all the extensions, and how to transition between PyCharm to Visual Studio Code. And regardless of the project, because Visual Studio Code is open source, the community are writing extensions to allow different kind of project, different kind of framework to be developed within Visual Studio Code. So at that time, you can install those community extensions and be able to write your project and continue project there. Of course, if you are making money, you are in a professional environment, then you can go with the PyCharm Professional Edition, which will provide you more functionality and everything is within that one IDE. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. If you want to support the channel, consider giving this video a like. Comment down below which one you use right now, which one you find more comfortable. And if you know of other people who would benefit from watching this video, please consider sharing this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want similar content. Thank you again. Have a nice day.